last-minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning ride is okay.
And staying in front of the day isn't always as simple as 1, 2, 3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
what's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the Master Instructor Roundtable. I'm Marty Miller here with fellow Master Instructor co-host, great friend, longtime friend, Miss Wendy Batts. Wendy, how's it going?
It's great, Marty. How are you?
Good. I know this one is near and dear to your heart, but also now with tennis elbow, lateral epicondylitis, you can put in pickleball elbow. But I know today is going to be a topic that you have great experience with your extracurricular activity of being an avid tennis player.
Yes. And actually, this came to us from one of our listeners. They were asking the question about the differences between tennis elbow and golfer's elbow. So Marty and I were like, we're definitely going to do one of each because it's really hard to combine these two because there are some significant differences that you would want to know about, especially around the anatomy of what causes one and what would lead to another. So we are going to focus specifically on tennis elbow. And thank you again for all of you listeners that send Marty and I some messages, letting us know how we're doing, and then also providing us with some ideas on future podcasts. So I know we say it at the end, but I want to go ahead and say again at the beginning that we do appreciate all of you. And we do welcome any kind of topics that you guys have, and we do our best to try to get them on the show. So again, thank you for the topic, and hopefully you will enjoy listening to our information on tennis elbow. And Marty, we're going to define what it is. That's going to be important. And we're going to definitely review some of the anatomy, what causes it. And then we're going to talk about some different corrective strategies to help, because even though, like you said, it's got the name, quote, tennis elbow, or the nickname tennis elbow, we're going to talk about truly what it's called. But it can be anything that's going to have repetitive movement that's going to be associated with the wrist and the elbow, which is a lot of different things. So just keep that in mind when a client comes to you and starts complaining about something on the outside of the elbow. Hopefully you guys will learn what to do to help them feel better and get out of pain.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, it's medically or more clinically known as lateral epicondylitis. That's because that's the area, the epicondyle of the bone that's inflamed. It's on the lateral side of your body. So this is the common overuse injury. And Wendy, I've seen it with electricians. I've seen it with people who work on cars. I've seen it in, any individual that has to constantly twist and rotate. That's very common. So, despite its name, it doesn't exclusively affect tennis players. It can occur in anyone, including athletes engaging in repetitive arm motions. So, as we move forward here, we're going to continue to talk about, this condition, and it usually stems from repetitive stress. So back to the electricians, the handymen, the tennis players, as well as now pickleball. This, I've done a lot of research there. It's a racket sport, so it's very similar. So a lot of people aren't used to flicking their wrist or backhanding, things like that. And this is where this inflammation in the tendons in the forearm muscles, specifically those that are attaching to that lateral epicondyle of the humerus. That's the bony bump on the outside of the elbow. So that's where it's going to be very tender to the touch.
And it's interesting. So when we go through this information, I got a lot of my content from Carl Christie. He was one of my professors. So I can't say that without giving him credit for some of the information that we're going to discuss, because he's the one that told me all about it. And he's helped me learn ways to help my clients. I mean, again, with being a manual therapist, I can do some different things, but we've got all the tools and techniques that if you don't have a license to touch or to work on certain people, this information is going to be extremely helpful. So I do need to give credit where credit is due. But one of the things too, the more and more I play and the more I hear people coming up, because again, I love to play tennis. And this is very common in a lot of our friends. And a lot of it is due, Marty, to the actual handle of the tennis racket. So think about this. If somebody is utilizing different tools and it's the actual size of the handles that they're using, if it's not something that is a normal, comfortable position and it's too wide and you can't grip correctly, that will be the first thing that starts it off. And then it unfortunately takes time, which everyone wants instant gratification. I want it to be fixed in one session or one time. Again, it takes the body 4 to 6 weeks to adapt. So as we were going through this, you need to let people know that depending on how many times a week you see these individuals, it will take time and they're going to have to do some things on their own, especially if they know what caused it. They need to change their ways, because I had a client that came with this and it took me forever, Marty, to figure out what it was. They were not a tennis player. They didn't have repetitive movements in their job. It was the way they were picking up their toaster. They would pick it up like in the middle because they had it in a drawer, and they did this daily because they had children that they were getting ready, making breakfast. And it was the toaster and the weight of the toaster that was causing these areas to become inflamed. And it took us forever to figure it out. But once we had her pick it up the normal way, with 2 hands, it started to go away.
Yeah. And, going back, this is why we do these Master Instructor Roundtables. There's always content that can be built into other podcasts. So we did one a long time ago called Get a Grip. And part of it was training the grip. And that's training, to be able to hold things using different size shapes and implements and progressing it. These are muscles just like anything else in your body. You have to strengthen the grip. You have to know what the ideal range of motion of wrist extension, wrist flexion, radial and ulnar deviation. So don't neglect your training and then all of a sudden go do something repetitively. Or as we're aging, all of a sudden, sometimes that's where you feel it more. So this is one of those key things that make sure you include this into your program.
100%. Okay, so when we're talking about this, as Marty mentioned, it's going to commonly affect tennis elbow is usually the extensor, and this is important, guys, the extensor muscles in the forearm. So you've got your tensor carpi radialis brevis, if you will. I mean, that's a lot. Extensor carpi radialis brevis, which helps stabilize the wrist when the wrist or the elbow is straight. And then, of course, your extensor digitorum, the muscles that allow you to extend your fingers and wrist. And as we keep saying, it's repetitive stress and overuse of these muscles and the tendons that cause them to develop the small tears, leading to, it says pain, but it can be even discomfort and inflammation and tenderness on the outside of the elbow. And this discomfort can radiate down the forearm and affect daily activities that involve, as you mentioned, Marty, gripping and lifting. And so you've got to look, if you're not actually looking at anything on YouTube or looking at our PowerPoint, just think if you were to move your wrist up and down, if you think about the extensor muscles and what the extensors do, they extend your wrist. And so you'll feel those muscles on the outside of your arm. If you bring your arm up, you're going to feel them actually pop up. Those are the muscles that are irritated. And if you go all the way to the tendon, that inflammation in that tendon that it connects to the bony part, so the outside or of the elbow, that's where the issues lie. And so those are areas that you can just massage yourself. You can teach your clients how to massage those areas, but those are the ones that are irritated. And so we've got to find ways to kind of down regulate the overactivity. Does that sound familiar, Marty? And then find ways too, because we also need to strengthen them. And so you have to think about ways of working around it and strengthening them as well, because we need to use them in all of our daily activities. So you have to be careful, and it's very specific on things that you can do.
And it's crazy, Wendy. I knew we were talking about this, and I had a little bit of inflammation in my right elbow from the move, from pickleball, et cetera. And I've been doing my own, correctives. And sitting on my desk are these little guys right here. And I've been doing my extensor work because it wasn't something I really focused on until I started to see the weakness because of the injury. And level 1 was a challenge at first, which was only 8 pounds when it was inflamed. Now I'm up to level 2 easily. And things are getting better. But I also changed the position of my hand. I'll do it with an arm straight versus an arm bent, because length tension relationships, different positions. So you can pick these things up for a few dollars, and there's 5 different levels. You'd be shocked how sometimes you put your finger in there on level 1 and you're like, and it doesn't matter how much wrist rolling you can do because you're eliminating those positions when you're holding the dumbbell, right? So simple little tools of the trade. They were sitting on my desk. I'm like, hey, what do you know?
Well, and also think about individuals that use the computer on the daily. If they don't have good position of their computer and their wrist, this can also affect and cause, quote, tennis elbow, and they're just doing their job. So it's very important when you're sitting down working with your clients that you have that subjective assessment. Talk to them, find out what do they do every single day, what might have led to it, when did they notice it, how long have they had it, because all of that is going to be really important as you're going through and designing the programs. So therefore you can ensure that it really is tennis elbow, even though they may have never picked up a tennis racket. It's just it's a common injury that happens in tennis. That's how it got its nickname. But yeah, so just kind of think about what they do, because even if you bend your wrist back and start moving your fingers, you'll feel those muscles start to go to work. And they're just, when they're doing it over and over and it's a constant movement, that's where we start to get ourselves in some trouble.
Right. And, now we're going to talk about how to help. So performing self-myofascial techniques, percussion, and things like that. I had a massage this weekend, and one of the areas I've always loved is the forearms. Like, how I love back, don't get me wrong, things like that. But I've always enjoyed a deep forearm massage because I do hold on to a lot of things. I do a lot of weightlifting and gripping and things like that. And those muscles hold tension just like anything else. So not forgetting to include that into your soft tissue. Not going to suggest foam rolling it, but I would suggest using the massage guns. There's different heads that you can utilize. You can see here the pitchfork type of head is perfect for that. But getting that soft tissue to relax, because you're using them all day when you work out, when you type, when you're on your phone, around the house. Like you said, those muscles take a beating. So, you first, Wendy put the great instructions here, locate the lateral epicondyle, that little bony prominence. You don't want to put the device on any bone, but it's a good landmark where to start. And then you want to cover the area between the epicondyle to the middle and back of the hand, ensuring that you're focusing on the extensor digitorum. And in this case, you go down the ulna and radius to treat the entirety of that area. And be sure to hold any tender spots, just like anything else, for 20 to 30 seconds. Just make sure you have the right head and the right amplitude, because there's not a lot of muscle mass in that area.
Well, and I put this on here too, Marty, because I see this all the time in the gym. We are fortunate enough where I work, we have multiple percussion devices that our trainers are allowed to use. So therefore the clients don't always have to foam roll. The trainers can do a lot of work for them. But the trainers just go back and forth over a muscle, and that is not going to do any service to your client. You really want to think, what muscle are you focusing on, going from the start of it to the end of it, and just nice slow movement patterns. But if something's tender, just like you do with the foam roller, if you were to hold that device on that muscle, it does get it to almost overexcite it to get it to relax. That's where we're getting that down regulation with using the vibration therapy. And you're going to have a better outcome, especially if you do it before they stretch. So therefore we can get the better stretch that we're trying to, because again, if you just go back and forth, something's aggravated and irritated and inflamed, that's just going to cause a lot of muscle spindles. You're not getting that Golgi tendon organ to come in and try to calm it down. You want to think, again, it's change of length, right? That's what the muscle spindles do. That's what it senses. And if it's constantly changing length, it's going to hold on a little bit tighter. So really just be very conscious of being slow and controlled. Know the muscles that you're focusing on. You don't have to press deeply. And then when something's tender, marinate on it, just like you would on a foam roller.
Yep. I mean, the model stays the same, right? We have to inhibit. So as we move to the next side, we're going to talk about lengthening, right? And a lot of the people don't think about this. I love this stretch. I do it daily. So you'll see here, the picture does it very well. They're grabbing from the back of the palm, not the fingers, right? Because I could move my fingers and not my wrist. So for this stretch, you extend your arms straight, palm facing down. And then with the other hand, you gently bend the wrist downward towards your torso until you feel stretched. Now, to me, one little trick, if you can add to that, is as long as you can keep your wrist straight, I go into a little bit of supination to get a little, just like you do on a calf stretch where you turn the knee out, just turn that elbow out slightly. Just don't let the wrist go with it, and you'll get even more of a stretch. Now, people with lateral epicondylitis, they may not be able to handle that part yet, but just understand that if you go into that little bit of a, looks like an external rotation, that supination, you'll get even more of a stretch. And then just like anything else with the model for static stretching, you're going to hold this for 20 to 30 seconds.
Yep. And also too, Marty, if you actually change even your shoulder position and you bring it and more of a flexion, sometimes it'll go even deeper, and because you're able to get better grip. But to your point, the biggest thing that we see is people use the fingertips, and then it ends up stressing it more because they're pulling on their wrist. We don't want to put the wrist in a compromised position. Again, it is a hinge joint. So you want to go down, make sure that you're pushing and utilizing that hinge. And then, like you said, or as you stated, Marty, you're going to hold that. And I do want to say, Marty, before we continue and go into the activation component of what we can do to work on the other side, this episode of the Master Instructor Roundtable is brought to you by NASM One, the membership for trainers and coaches. Members enjoy unlimited access to hundreds of career resources. So get the Edge app to schedule your program and program clients. Enjoy half off all certifications and specializations. You get access to free CEUs and more. All of this for just $35 a month. Go to nasm.org/membership to learn more about NASM One. So Marty, let's go into the activation component, what we can do to help strengthen those weaker muscles.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to go about it. And again, if you want more, go wherever you found this podcast, go to NASM's YouTube page and put in Master Instructor Roundtable, get a grip. We go even more into more complex training for grip. That would be maybe once someone's past the initial stages of this, but it will give you more advanced programming. But the basics here, wrist curls, hold a light weight like a dumbbell in your hand and with your palm facing up, then slowly lower, pause, then curl up. Remember that slow controlled tempo, that 4-2-2-2 tempo. Higher, sets and reps, 3 sets, 15, maybe in 20 reps. These are endurance muscles, and you need to reestablish that muscular endurance over time. Then you have that pronation, supination, eccentric exercise. So protecting the wrist on a table, hold a light weight, again, could be a dumbbell, with your elbow bent at 90 degrees and your palm facing down. Rotate your forearm outward, that's the supination. And then then to the starting position. So then you again repeat that 3 sets, 15, maybe even 20 repetitions.
Yeah, and one thing too, Marty, some people can get that tubing that a lot of times if you've gone to have seen a physical therapist, it's that tubing that gets on this. It's in a big roll, and there's obviously different resistances. But if you can get like a light resistance band, and even have them tie a knot in the bottom, put it around their foot, they can do these different movement patterns and stuff at work. So, I mean, people don't want to go around necessarily and carry a dumbbell, but you can just throw that in your pocket, in your purse. I mean, it's something that's easy to do. And if you just do this throughout the day, it doesn't have to be something, it's a corrective exercise strategy. So you want to think, if you could do these a couple times a day, even if you don't just do 3 sets of 15 once, if you did some in the morning and then later on that afternoon, you got a chance to use the percussion device, did some stretching, and then did it again, you're going to have better outcomes. More is not always better, but being smarter in what you did that day that might have caused it to get irritated, trying to calm it back down before you go to work. And then maybe after you're done, you will probably have a better outcome too. But these are the easiest ones, I think, to do because it doesn't take, you don't need anything other than yourself and maybe something that's weighted. So we're using the dumbbells as an example because that's what we do. But just know if there's anything that you can use in the house, even a can of soup or something, that's fine. But just make sure that it's not too much of a grip and they're trying to do it, because that's also going to irritate it.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. You got to be careful not overtrain. So then some other things you can do is grip strengthening with a stress ball or hand gripper. Squeeze a stress ball, use the hand gripper to help strengthen the muscles involved in gripping, and get different sizes, right? Because again, you're changing the length tension relationship. Sometimes you have a small jar you got to twist. Sometimes you have like the big pickle jar you got to twist. And you can see that even if they're put on with the same amount of force, as soon as you go for that bigger jar, your muscles are in a lengthened position, it can become harder. So you want to train in different patterns and different positions. So that's a fun way to do that. So perform controlled squeeze, hold it for about 10 to 15 repetitions. And again, I like to change my arm angle, arm extended, arm bent, getting the body to work in different positions that I may face in every day. And then another cool one that everybody has access to are towel twists. So you hold a loosely rolled towel in your hand lengthwise, keep your arms and shoulders relaxed, make this a forearm exercise. Gently twist the towel in one direction as if you're wringing water. Next, twist it in the reverse direction, and then perform 10 to 15 repetitions at a slow pace. Once you advance from that, I love to train forearms and grip strength. I just ordered one of those back in the day. We used to do the roller where you hang a weight. That is such a great exercise. Now, again, that's more advanced because I'm putting external load, but just getting somebody to be able to wring that towel back and forth, if they have a very tender area or kind of, acute lateral epicondylitis, tennis elbow, that could be difficult for them. So, there's, again, simple to complex, progressions to regressions. And then once I get somebody better, why would we not put in some more of those advanced strengthening techniques so that way they can combat this?
Oh, I know. And Marty, I'll tell you, people tell me all the time that they need to hang from a bar, that's all that they can do. And I'm like, you know what? If somebody has an irritated elbow and then you're hanging them on a bar, and let's say their lats are also overactive, which it happens in a lot of individuals, guys, you're going to make it worse because now you're stressing your shoulder or arching your back because you're still hopefully working on getting good lat extensibility. Plus you're putting your body weight on areas and holding on with your hands. That's going to affect the wrist, the shoulder, and the elbow. So not something that I would recommend. And I see it a lot of times. People are like, I'm just going to go hang from the bar because I need to work on, my tennis elbow. I have never understood that. So I know it's out there and there's probably research behind why people do it. But to your point, Marty, if somebody is complaining and it's irritated and inflamed, you need to start with the basics first before you start to add weight or add, some sort of hangs. Because Marty, on our Get a Grip, we did talk about the importance of hanging, and that is an assessment. So just think, are they coming to you with inflammation? Is that the right time to implement the exercise? I would say no. However, once again, once it starts to calm down and you want to start to do different things, then by all means, do what's in the best interest of your client, as long as it makes sense.
Without a doubt. No, well said, Wendy. And, as we move here to the key takeaways, first, to me, one of the key takeaways, even before we get to the understanding the cause of tennis elbow, are you truly training people's forearms? Are you putting it into the soft tissue work? Are you looking at the range of motion? Are you including warm-ups? Are you including stretches? Another one, Wendy, that, I should have put in here more for power phase is battle ropes, right? You can do a lot of ones where you isolate the forearms instead of getting a total shoulder or arm workout in. They're both great, but maybe I want to isolate the forearms for a period of time and have them just rattle those ropes with different patterns, external rotation, circular, snake patterns, figure eight, slams, to get those forearms to build that endurance and power. So there's a lot of things you can do. Just be specific and be, what's the word, what I want to say, kind of purposeful with your intentions when you're using these implements, and you'll cover a lot of ground without even thinking about it. So back to the key takeaways is, do you understand the cause of tennis elbow? Have you identified what caused this? Then review the anatomy as needed, as we've talked about, to ensure proper programming, assessments, right? And design a proper corrective exercise plan. And something else that just popped in my head, we did talk about this in Get a Grip. Get a grip strength tester. Do that as a baseline in any assessment and compare right versus left. You shouldn't be 20% off. And if you start to have elbow issues and I grip and your strength's down, we know. And I've seen some research now that could be one of the best indications of full recovery, right? If I know my grip strength is 150 and I'm at 120, am I fully recovered? So these are things that we talk about in the other podcast as well, about the science and importance of understanding grip and then how to prevent injuries. And then we're going to come back here in another week and talk about golfer's elbow.
Yeah. And I do want to say too, Marty, and I learned this from our mentor, who is a physical therapist. And like I said, with the different sports and different injuries that we would see, I am not a doctor, but this is something that we did all the time and something that is highly recommended with people that do come and they do legitimately have tennis elbow, is just get like a Dixie cup or some kind of cup that is that kind of you can easily tear, and put some water in it, freeze it, and then you'll take the top of it and rip it off. So therefore there's a little bit of ice, and then just give yourself an ice massage, or give your, tell your clients to do that themselves, because ice massages too, if there's inflammation, can help kind of bring some of that inflammation down. But do that after you've done all of the correctives, and tell them to do that for 10-15 minutes and then call it a day. And then hopefully over time, this will start to dissipate and they will start to feel better.
You just gave me deja vu. I used to have to fill ice cups up.
Me too.
Hundreds as an athletic training student.
Oh, I know. Me too.
Yes, indeed. So Wendy, if you could give these great people your contact information, please.
Absolutely. Again, this came from one of our listeners, so thank you for sending this topic our way. But if you have other ideas for podcasts, you have questions about what Marty and I discussed, you can always find me on Instagram at wendy.batts13, or you can email me at wendy.batts@nasm.org.
My contact information right here, dr.martymiller72 for Instagram, and marty.miller@nasm.org. So Wendy, thanks for getting the request, putting these together, and all your insights. And for all of you that joined us, please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you for joining this week, and we always look forward to seeing you next week on the Master Instructor Roundtable.